Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another day of Ixalan previews. Now, things are winding down. We actually do have the last Mythic today and a number of rares, which is pretty refreshing because we've seen a lot of uncommons, albeit some good uncommons. Even some commons were coming to play yesterday, but we have a number of rares to look at. I'm excited to dive into them. Now, tomorrow, we're going to have to get the full set revealed. So we'll begin our full set review starting with the white cards, and we'll do a series of videos leading up to the pre-release, which is just a little over a week away now, which is pretty crazy to think. Finally, we can play with these cards. Now, quickly before we get started, if you're looking for a way to support the channel, that's always appreciated. It helps us keep doing what we're doing. You can find some ways in the description below. You'll find our Patreon page linked below. You'll also find some Amazon product links if you make any purchases, really anything. Once you go through those links, a small percentage will come to us. And then finally, Flipside Gaming has also provided a promo code for discounts on their site. They're doing pre-orders now for Ixalan as well as Iconic Masters. So all those are ways to help us keep doing what we're doing. But with that being said, let's get into the cards for today. We got some good ones. Access Immortality. This is our Mythic. 2 white and 4 enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have 2 target players exchange life totals. Okay, when I first saw this card, Commander just leapt to my mind. This feels like an awesome Commander card just to play around with. You have to defend yourself. You have to defend the card. It doesn't do anything really till it gets back to your upkeep. There are some drawbacks to it, of course. But if you can pull it off, I mean, it's just super fun, right? Have a card or just something that's going to allow you to exchange your life for resources, like card draw, something like that, and then exchange that life total with someone else. And then you can even do it repeatedly because this is an enchantment. It doesn't go away. So you can get your life total down to like 1, switch it with someone else, and then next time around, do the same thing again. And sure, everyone at the table is going to try to beat you, but if you have the defense around yourself, then maybe you can pull it off. Perhaps it's a good pillow fort card or something like that. And by the way, definitely worth mentioning that it's target player, so you can use this as a political card too, and just start swapping other people's life totals if you just really wanted to be super mischievous with the card. So it seems like it could be super fun. I want to try it out there. Beyond that, it's a little awkward. Even for limited play, it's going to be strange because you don't know when you're going to be losing necessarily. It's kind of like the whole mirror universe idea that, okay, if I'm behind, this is a great card, but I'm not playing to be behind, right? So I'm probably not going to run this at the 6th spot. Probably going to run a creature that's going to help my board state a little bit. Paying 6 for this and then waiting to get back to my turn and hopefully being in a situation where this will benefit me is just too awkward, even for like sealed and draft a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe I sign it in if I'm against a really aggressive deck that's beating me down early on and I think of it more of a life gain spell, and that could be a way to use it perhaps, but I think that's going to be pretty rare. And again, same thing for standard, it's just not going to be consistent enough there, but this card was definitely designed for Commander. Emissary of Sunrise. This is a white and 2 human cleric, uncommon, first strike, 2/1, and when this enters the battlefield, it explores. I actually like this card a whole bunch. I love Explore. I think this is going to be a really fun mechanic. We haven't seen all the cards yet. I don't think Explore is going to be like an Explore deck in Standard, but I think there's going to be certain cards that are just going to cross over into maybe a few different Standard decks, just depending on which ones are the best designed and the most efficient. I even think if they design some efficient ones, and maybe we'll know more tomorrow once we see everything, that some of these could even cross over into Modern or Legacy. I think the mechanic is actually that good. Now, this card in particular, I'd be happy to play this in Limited all day long. I could see myself first picking this in some packs in Draft, actually. A 2/1 for Striker for 3, I'd play that. Put on the fact that this sometimes will be a 3/2, and even if it's not, you get to explore anyway. It's still a really, really good card for you in Limited. I'm happy to run this, and I think the power level is there for Standard as well. I'm not sure exactly which deck or anything this fits into. Maybe it'll be a couple different ones, but it has a nice aggressive feel to it. Could be good in Standard. Next, we have a card that comes to us from an Italian language preview. It is Fleet Swallower. It costs 2 blue and 5. It's a fish, 6/6. When this attacks, target player puts the top half of his or her library into his or her graveyard, rounded up. This card is a beating in Limited when you have 40 card decks. I mean, this is actually kind of crazy. Now, granted, The less cards that your opponent has left, the less this is going to impact them. But no matter what, it's putting them on a clock, and it's still a 6/6 body. You're getting all this for 7. It doesn't have evasion, but I'm okay with that considering the power level that's behind this card. So if you can get this thing out maybe on turn like 7, 8, or 9 or so, attack in with this, your opponent's got to start thinking about how they can put you away and how quickly they can put you away, because they are now on a clock. And if for some reason you attack in again, it just expands on that. Maybe not as much as the first time, but it still expands on it. So this is obviously very reminiscent of Traumatize, but it's a creature and it's got a pretty big size to it too, as a 6/6. I'd be happy to run this in limited. Like, I could see myself first picking this in a lot of packs, I think, and be happy with it. It is a high-end card, but it's definitely something I feel is worth the 7 mana if I can get there and cast it. A little too expensive for what it's doing in Standard, unfortunately. Could be fun, though, to try out in Commander. Also worth pointing out, this can target you too, so if you have a reason to mill yourself, this card can help you get there too. Perilous Voyage. This one is a blue and 1 uncommon instant. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand if its converted mana cost was 2 or less. Scry 2. So another good uncommon. I actually like this card a lot as well. Here's what I like about it. Instant speed. Also return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. So it's non-land permanent, not just creature. You're getting a lot here. The scry sometimes will happen, sometimes it doesn't. If it happens, wonderful. If it doesn't, you still have a very, very efficient tempo spell on your hands here for 2 mana. Now, they were careful to say stuff your opponent controls and not you. You don't want a situation where you can sit there and bounce your Snapcaster Mage and scry 2 all day. That might be kind of sweet, but this card's not going to let you do that. So, it's still great, though. I mean, this is something that I'd be happy to play in Limited. Maybe first pickable, again, in a lot of packs. Definitely a high pick, though, for a tempo play. And then in Standard, I think this could see some Standard play, just because of the fact that it's an instant, and we are losing a lot of cards with a rotation. Now, if everything was staying in from the previous sets, I'd say I don't know if this will quite get there, but because we're losing so much when it comes to tempo plays and counter spells and such, I do think this does have a chance to see a little bit of play, maybe in a control deck or something like that. It's a really sleek card. Death Gorge Scavenger. This is a green and 2 dinosaur. This is another one of the rares today. 3/2. When this enters the battlefield or attacks, you may exile target card from a graveyard. If a creature card is exiled this way, you gain 2 life. If a non-creature card is exiled this way, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Okay, so sure, it's not Scavenging Ooze, but that's okay. This card's actually still pretty good. This is one of those cards that is here to say goodbye to the old block and try to stumble some of their strategies, the Embalm, the Eternalize, the Aftermath strategies, and really create an environment that helps the new strategies from the new block. This is a pretty normal design tactic that they use. And as a matter of fact, this is a dinosaur, and that goes along with the dinosaur tribal, right? So this is actually a pretty good card. A lot of efficiency here for 3 mana, 3/2 body to begin with. It deals with a problem in the graveyard and can kind of cherry pick initially when it enters the battlefield, and later on if you attack, you can deal with maybe 2 cards out of a graveyard. And really, Amonkhet strategies, 1 or 2 cards being taken out of the graveyard a lot of times is enough to make them stumble. It's not like some of the graveyard strategies we've seen in the past, maybe from some other sets where you had crazy reanimation and stuff going on. Just losing that big Aftermath card, losing that big Eternalized card is going to be annoying enough, right? This is actually probably good enough. Now, unlike Scavenging Ooze, of course, you don't get +1/+1 counters. The thing doesn't continue to grow. But in this environment, especially considering it's a smaller standard, that's probably a good idea. A card like Scavenging Ooze would be too powerful, at least right now. So it kind of is what it is. But yes, it's a fine card. It will see standard play out of sideboards if there's any cards that are messing around with graveyard tactics. And who knows, maybe it does even show up in the dinosaur deck. Just that little bit of life gain, plus the ability to attack in every once in a while with some additional +1/+1 power might matter, especially if it's a fast standard. So this is one to keep an eye on. But aside from that, limited, yeah, I'm happy to play this all day long. A 3/2 body for 3, that had me right there, but with all the other stuff attached to it, I'll certainly pick this relatively high in a draft. Next, we have a card that comes to us from a Spanish language preview, and it's Double Volley. 2 red and 1 sorcery. It deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Raid, pay 2 red and 3, and return this from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only if you attacked with a creature this turn. Okay, the downside first, it's a sorcery, and it does cost 3, and that raid effect is a little expensive at 5. Those are the downsides. But having said that, I will say that this card actually still feels pretty good to me. I remember back to the days of buyback cards, you could juggle things like Forbid, and it got kind of out of hand. Now, this isn't as easy as that necessarily, but the fact that I can pay 3, do 3 to a creature or player, that's super sweet actually. And then later on, when I'm getting a lot of land and I'm not hitting my heat and I'm in that aggressive deck, that I can use this raid ability, hopefully attack in with some of my small creatures, pay 5 raid, get it back. It's a little conditional, it's a little situational, but I think with the right deck around it, that you can at least reduce the risk of this card quite a bit. And because of that, I don't believe I'm going to say this, but I think it might see standard play right now in the current environment. Again, we're losing a lot of stuff. We're gaining some cool things like Lightning Strike. I mean, this isn't going to elbow that out of a deck, but it's definitely maybe something that supplements something like Lightning Strike. You might see an aggro deck with more burn than we saw in Ramanap Red going forward. And if that's the case, maybe you do see this. It has to be a very balanced deck between small creatures and burn. But if someone can brew that, maybe this does see standard play. I think it has the potential to get there. The raw power is definitely there. And I just like the card generally. It's going to be good for you in limited for sure. Again, another one of those possible first picks in draft. It is removal. It's going to deal with some threats that you might see on the board. And on top of that, late game, if you're in a board stall, this card could be really good for you in certain situations. Shadowed Caravel. This one costs 2. It's a vehicle. It's another rare 2/2. And whenever a creature you control explores, put a +1/+1 counter on this, and it has a crew 2. All right, this is kind of funny because I think this is a fine vehicle, but it's going to seem a little dull because we just came from Kaladesh not too long ago where they just introduced vehicles and the power level was really way off the scale. Now, because some of those were too powerful, I think they're dialing back, and they probably just dialed back a little too much in this set, right? So what do you end up with? 2 casting cost, 2/2 with a crew 2, that maybe you can get some +1/+1 counters on as time goes on, and if you do, it still doesn't have evasion. Yeah, it's okay. Like, it's not horrible, don't get me wrong, but it's really hard to say, I'm going to play this instead of some of the cards that we saw in Kaladesh, right? Especially when you're talking about standard, since those are still in the environment. So that's going to be the problem. This card's going to have a hard time existing in a standard environment when those other vehicles are still there. And because of that, it's not going to do much. Now, with that being said, though, limited purposes, yeah, I'd probably play this if I have at least a fair amount of Explorer. I don't necessarily need the whole Explorer deck or anything. Even in Sealed, if I have enough Explorer going on, this is playable. And yeah, in Draft, if I happen to pick up a lot of Explorer, it becomes even better. I think it's just good enough there. It's cheap for 2. Crew 2's not too bad. And the fact that it could become bigger as time goes on, maybe later in the game it's a 4/4 or 5/5, feels like it's good enough for me. So not always going to make my cut, maybe, depending on what my deck's trying to do, but it's definitely playable. It's a fine card in that regard. All right, with that being said, those are the cards for today. So I'm pretty excited. Tomorrow we see the full set. We're going to start the review. And this set seems like it's going to be a ton of fun to draft. I love tribal sets, and I know a lot of players do. And sometimes the balance can be hard to get right. So I hope they got it right. It seems like they did, just from what we've seen so far. So we'll have to see. And then, of course, we'll have a whole new standard to talk about. I'm excited about that. So a lot going on over the course of the next few weeks. So, hey, until next time, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.